reinventing things that we invented. Millennials are like, hey, we've created this new, just pull the slide quickly. We've created this new virtual reality goggle, and that'll take you anywhere in the world you want to go. And I'm like, no, we made that. Thank you. I can go anywhere in the world too. As long as on one of the 3 discs I have isn't scratched up. They're like, yeah, but Scott, we now have smart home speakers. I'm like, I had one in '83. Thank you. All I need is 27 D batteries, and this will last for 40 to 45 minutes. But it's gotten to this boiling point, a breaking point, when we see articles now in books and talks on dealing with millennials and how they're different and how the world's different. And here, I'm going to read you something here. So it says, I'm fed up with the ceaseless carving of a handful of spoiled, self-indulgent, overgrown adolescents. This is a generation that was raised with the highest standard of living in the history of the world. We have a generation whose every need has been catered to since birth. Now when they finally face adulthood, they expect the gift giving to continue. But the whiners want everything now. A generation raised on the principle of instant satisfaction simply can't understand the concepts of long-term planning and deferred gratification. What's their reaction when they don't get what they want? That's right, they throw a tantrum. Most people live ordinary lives with quiet aspirations stuck in uninteresting jobs they're afraid to lose. If you want more than that, move out of your parents' house and start working, and for heaven's sake, stop whining. I would not clap for that. This is from Newsweek, October 31st, 1993. Especially the people who are saying, amen, yeah. This wasn't written about millennials. This is written about my people. Gen X. They used to say in that day, hello ladies. How you doing? My audition photo for Lord of the Rings. I lost to Orlando Bloom. Some of you will notice the Jostin stamp on the left-hand side of it. See, back in the day, they printed these things and sent you proofs. And my mom got them and said, well, we can either buy the print or just keep the proof. And so set of photos, and we weren't sure Scott was going to graduate. It was sound financial advice, really, my mom, really, it was perfectly. This is me at 18. Okay, look at millennials in the room. I got your back. Why? Because we were the millennials 25 years ago. My fellow Xers, what was our name of our generation? Remember what the tagline they gave us? We were the slacker generation, which I thought was a command. I've been doing it ever since. I don't understand. Well, you don't have a job. But we were the ones back then, right? Right? We were what? Lazy, entitled, right? Always on the computer, whatever. We're losing whatever things we had in the past. Millennials, what's being said about you? Lazy, entitled, always on the phone. Problem with authority. I still have a problem with authority. Right? Every generation hates the younger generation. My grandfather hated my father. My father certainly hates me, and I hate my kids. I'm kidding, I don't. I don't hate our kids. I hate your kids. Yeah. Have you seen them in public? Horrible. Yeah, horrible. But this has been it. We went back through history finding on it, and it just kept going. I'm going to give you another quote, and I want you to tell me when you think the quote was from, okay? we go. Times are bad, children no longer obey their parents, and everyone is writing a book. This literally could have been written this morning. Shout out what you think this is from. 60s? Is it 20s? Was there time then? I don't know. What's happening? I don't get it. This is 50 BC. For a gentleman named Cicero, who looks weirdly like a statue, but I didn't do well in history. I didn't even know who Cicero was when I looked this up. I thought it said Cisco. Remember his poetry, like thong song and stuff. Yeah, it was a big song back then. Big song for Gen X. But this is the issue. I remember what it feels like to get ripped on, to be pushed down, to be told to stay in my lane and know your role. So every generation rips on it. So is there any difference now with millennials and the next generation coming? And the answer is yes. And why there's a difference more than any other generational time in history is because of disruption. Disruption is very basic. Disruption simply is change without time to resist it. Does that make sense? It's change without time to resist it. We used to have time. We used to have time. We had decades, centuries to deal with change coming. And if we saw it coming down the road, we just waited out. And eventually we just retired. Or we sell a client list, whatever we're going to do, we just get ourselves out of it. It took 82 years for electricity, from initial concept to mass adoption. It took 52 years for refrigeration, 26 years for the microwave, 6 years for the internet, 4 years for smartphones, 2 years for social media. Do you see the issue? So we already have the anger and the angst of us hating on younger people simply because we are not. Yes? We already have that. Now, we change all the rules, because this was the deal. This is what we were told. Go to school, get good grades. Oh no, pass. Okay. Go to school, go to college, get a job, work, retire. That's it. And then it all changed. It all changed somehow, and you got these jackasses showing up with their man buns on scooters just coming in, and they're like, let's do it this way. You're like, you can't do it. Oh, they did. Okay, they didn't do it that way. That's how this works. And it's been fascinating in your industry, because you have these disruptors coming in. By the way, it's only called disruption when it happens to you. If you do it, we call it innovation. Yes? Same thing. The problem is we bring in new people into our industry. We bring in younger people to the industry. And they have all the ideas because they've grown up in disruption. They have all these ideas and we're like, okay, shut up. Like, you be quiet. You just know your role. Stay your lane. When the only way innovation happens is through insubordination. It's being insubordinate to a way of doing something, a construct or idea. And that's what that is. So when somebody thinks differently, what they're not saying is, you're wrong. What they're saying is, there's other ways, and should we investigate them? Because you, who are maybe older and not as disrupt-able as you want to be, right? Like myself, I don't like change at all. Nobody ever wants that. But the longer you are out there and the farther away you are from the things that are making things disruptive, the more threatened you feel. So their ideas are threats. And that's not the case. Because we have something a younger generation cannot have, which is wisdom. And wisdom is simply time plus mistakes. Yes? That is invaluable. And you're in the relationship business. And relationships about time. You can't rush relationships. You can't scale relationships. The longer you are in real estate, the more you're known. And that's the biggest asset in this business. So people can't just shortcut it and run with it. Right? You are that part of it, no matter where you are, because age is literally just a number. We spend the first 21 years of our life trying to look older, and the last 60 or so trying to look younger. Yeah? I have news for you. You're gorgeous. You're gorgeous now. I want the faces in this room to be the faces that are used, which what I'm trying to say is, don't use a photo that doesn't look like you. see your billboard or your bus shelter advertising, you love those things. Bus shelter advertising, right? And you see your face, and then I meet with you for coffee, and you are not. They're like, how you doing? I'm Jeff. You're like, are you? I don't think so. It breaks the trust. What else are you trying to hide? Your industry is built on trust and trust alone. And we have this world with disruption coming in, and somebody's like, well, you should fax that over here, and somebody younger is like, oh, what? Do what? Right? Like, I had a realtor years ago, his insurance usually is like, can you sign this, Scott, and fax me back the original? And I'm like, no problem, 1982, I can do that. Yeah. So I signed it on my phone with Adobe Fill and Sign. Sent it back, and he's like, oh, thanks so much for being so fast, Scott. Unfortunately, I can't accept that. I need you to fax me the original. You weren't laughing before. Okay, so when you fax something, you don't take the original and like a pneumatic tube that goes somewhere. This is not about faxing. But this is the issue. And this is the problem, is we don't. We listen to somebody and say, you can't know what you're talking about because you're not me. Well, that's good. We want different opinions. We want different ways of doing things. We want different strategies. Okay, I want you to do things. I want you to market yourself with your brain. I want you to go with your brain. Okay, just because one person's doing something doesn't mean you should. Okay, maybe one person's really good at knocking on doors. All right, awesome. If you feel like you want to vomit before you do it, you don't do that. Your body's saying, hey, I'm going to lose your lunch to tell you to stop doing it. You stop. Go with your brain, because if you are your